life of a fish.
Sustainable Development Goals, life below the sea, clean water and sanitation, and climate action.
This is John, the fish, and his good friend Nate. You see, his friend Nate had an unfortunate encounter with a stray diaper, and he passed away.
Ah!
You see, as OMV Sustainable Living describes, John lost his friend to something called petroleum-based plastics or petrochemistry. These come from crude oil and natural gas. Producers use distillation to liquefy the petroleum gas. Then heat breaks down hydrocarbons, resulting in short-chain hydrocarbons like ethylene, propylene, butadiene, which are used in tires, clothing, and footwear, and benzene, which is essential for binding elements. Many of these molecules are processed further to create long-chain hydrocarbons with new properties. For example, polyethylene comes from ethylene, which makes it more ductile and resistant.
But what does this have to do with my friend?
Well, according to our good friend Dr. Cooper from UW-Madison, these plastics that are manufactured through petrochemistry all end up in oceans eventually, whether large and visible or invisible microplastics. As described by the Lancet Journal on Diabetes and Endocrinology, food contact plastics, some pesticides, flame retardants, perfluorinated compounds, and other endocrine disrupting compounds are derived from oil, coal, or gas. Data from the United Nations Environment Program state that chemical production has increased 300 times since 1970, and 800 species worldwide are affected by plastic pollution. The Pew Research Center estimated that around 13 million metric tons of plastic end up in the oceans per year. Then, fish, seabirds, sea turtles, and marine mammals may become entangled in or ingest plastic debris, causing suffocation, starvation, and drowning. For your coral reef friends specifically, these plastics encourage the growth of certain pathogens, which can cause coral reefs to have an 89% chance of contracting deadly diseases. You see, this chart from Amino Labs depicts petroplastics are not natural. They require greater energy to break their chemical bonds and decompose. Many of them require a couple years to multiple centuries to break down. So, that diaper your friend unfortunately passed away in from, that will take another 500 years to decompose. Think of all the sea life that will encounter the same diaper and meet the same fate as your friend.
Oh my lord. Is there a solution to this?
Absolutely, biodegradable plastics. According to Chemistry Libre text, polylactic acid, or PLA, is formed from the synthesis of lactic acid. Lactic acid can either undergo a condensation polymerization reaction or the ring opening of lactide molecules to form PLA. Lactic acid can be produced during the fermentation of starches and other agricultural waste like potato peelings, corn, wheat, and sugar beets. The condensation polymerization reaction of PLA can be seen like this. H and OH are removed from either side of the lactic acid molecule to form the polymer with other monomers and water as a byproduct. The ring opening of lactide molecules can be seen like this. Lactic acid is combined with lactide, a cyclic monomer, which is cleaved and initiates a chain reaction to add to a growing chain of PLA. According to the History of Simple Things, this process produces PLA of higher purity than condensation polymerization. Both the condensation polymerization and ring opening of lactide molecules forms long polymer chains of PLA. After the synthesis of PLA, it can be processed into films, sheets, molded products, and more. Processing techniques are similar to those of traditional plastics. First, extrusion is the process of melting PLA pellets and forcing them through a special tool called a die to create thin films that can be used for packaging materials. Then, injection molding produces more complex shapes like cutlery, cups, and containers. This compatibility with existing manufacturing processes makes it easier for industries to adopt biodegradable plastics without significant changes to their production lines.
That sounds hard to produce.
Yes and no. If you look at it right now from a money-making perspective, you might see that producing bioplastics is currently 2 times more expensive compared to conventional plastics because of the additional steps in the production processes and its current market. In an article by Science Direct, they described how by using feedstock as a resource, producers of biodegradable plastics have the added cost of agricultural land, machinery, shorter life cycle, and pesticides. Then, the Hamburg Institute of International Economics describes how the different steps to form the lactide molecules that go through ring opening polymerization affects the amount of heat and energy used, which increases the cost. Also, costs are currently higher for bioplastics due to a lack of market readiness and therefore capacity for production. In order for companies to be willing to pay the extra costs associated with biodegradable plastic production, there must be sufficient demand. There is currently an increasing demand for sustainable alternatives instead of single-use plastics, but it is difficult to keep up with. Production companies need time to catch up and increase their capacity. Once they have expanded, assuming the high demand remains steady, the costs are expected to drop and market readiness will increase. A blog post by EuroPLAs overviews how companies are currently trying to produce some PLA products, including everyday items like food trays, containers, bags, cutlery, medical sutures, cases and cords for various technology products, car parts like spare tires, and 3D printing materials. According to the National Library of Medicine, when this capacity is increased, costs are expected to drop to around the same as petroleum plastic prices. The lower cost plus environmental impacts compared to conventional plastics makes bioplastic a competitive future option for both producers and consumers.
Wow, that sounds difficult at the moment, but the future is bright. Do biodegradable plastics stick around too?
Nah, don't worry, these break down. Oh my lord, what is that?
Watch out!
Not again. I'll take it. Oh, don't worry, I'll take it from here. According to the National Library of Medicine, the 2 main mechanisms through which PLA is degraded is through hydrolytic degradation and enzymatic degradation, but thermal and mechanical degradation also contribute under certain conditions. LibreText describes the process of hydrolytic degradation. Water cleaves the ester bonds, breaking long PLA chains down. This process ultimately produces lactic acid monomers. This is essentially the reverse reaction of the condensation polymerization used to form PLA. In the general ester hydrolysis reaction, a water molecule splits into H plus and OH minus ions, which attach to the ends of the broken ester bond. The H plus binds to the oxygen of the alcohol portion, and the OH minus binds to the carbon of the carboxylic acid portion, forming a carboxylic acid and an alcohol. According to Springer Nature, enzymatic degradation occurs when microorganisms secrete depolymerase that accelerates hydrolysis of PLA. Microbes then metabolize lactic acid into CO2 and H2O. According to the National Library of Medicine, different environmental conditions are needed for effective PLA degradation. For hydrolytic degradation, there must be a high temperature above 55 degrees Celsius to accelerate the process. The environment must be moist to provide water for bond cleavage. For enzymatic biodegradation, microorganisms must be present to produce enzymes used in the process. The conditions must be aerobic so that oxygen is available, which is necessary for producing CO2 and H2O. And for real-world limitations, biodegradable plastics can take a couple months up to several years to fully decompose. For example, some biodegradable plastics made from plant-based materials like cornstarch, PLA, or PHA can decompose within 3 to 6 months in ideal conditions such as composting facilities where temperature, moisture, and oxygen levels are carefully controlled. My Word Press depicts how there are many biodegradable polymers in the PLA family. This includes PLLA, PDLA, and PDLLA. According to Science Direct, L-lactic acid and D-lactic acid are enantiomers, which are non-superimposable mirror images of each other. The difference between these polymers is that PLLA is made of only L-lactic acid, while PDLA is made of only D-lactic acid. Because they are stereoisomers, PLLA and PDLA degrade differently in nature. Both PLLA and PDLA have chains that pack tightly, forming a semi-crystalline structure, which leads to slower degradation. As described by Medtronic, PDLLA contains both L-lactic acid and D-lactic acid, creating LL and LD bonds. This results in an irregular chain in an amorphous structure, which is a solid that lacks a long-range ordered arrangement of its particles, resulting in a disordered or non-crystalline state. Because of this amorphous structure, PDLLA degrades much faster than PLLA and PDLA.
Now, why would someone want to buy into these biodegradable plastics? I wonder how we can make them more appealing.
Great question. There are a few reasons. According to Science Direct, crude oil costs have increased significantly within the past decade, with a high peak in 2020 to 2022. This has caused the gap between cost of petroleum-based plastic and bioplastics to close. In some cases, bioplastics may be the same or even lower to produce the petroplastics. Since eco-friendly alternatives to solve our plastic waste issue have been so popular as of recent years, as I described previously, the research regarding bioplastics is only going to get better. The rapid advancement of engineering has also opened opportunities to better the design of sustainable plastics for the environment, producers, and consumers. According to NatureWorks, some people, especially those with a higher socioeconomic status, find the idea of green products more appealing. Thus, biodegradable plastics can be marketed with green marketing.
Great! Why don't we all use bioplastics right now then?
Well, according to Science Direct, bioplastics are not able to replace all petroleum-based plastics right now. Improvements are still being made. Also, many consumers don't like change, and bioplastics may look or feel different than what they're used to. Overall, bioplastics are currently either too fragile or bitter, or have poor reactions to moisture and temperature compared to synthetic plastics. Although scientists and engineers are currently working on developing better designs that combat these issues, currently there is not a clear solution. According to the University of Birmingham, even with these challenges, we do have one thing in our power: raising awareness. Unless political and consumer awareness increases, demand for non-eco-friendly products will continue to grow. As described by Plastics Technology, NatureWorks, which sells under the brand name Inigo, is currently the world's largest producer of PLA-based biopolymers. Some other leading manufacturing companies today include Novamont, Bioplastics International, and Good Natured Products. As described by Packaging Dive, one thing to watch out for with biodegradable plastics is that if they end up in landfills instead of composting at industrial facilities, they can break down and produce methane, which is about 25 times more potent than CO2 over 100 years. So, even though PLA is marketed as eco-friendly, it can still contribute significantly to greenhouse gas emissions if it isn't properly disposed of. Now that you've learned about how petroplastics are harming sea life, can you tell humans what they can do to stop it?
Of course, my aquatics friends and I need your help. You can support initiatives that increase consumer demand for biodegradable plastics, because as demand increases, so will supply. Additionally, you can help protect marine life by fostering conversations about positive effects of PLA-based bioplastics on life under the sea. Even the smallest discussions help to spread awareness. Your day-to-day choices matter. Please choose reusable items over single-use plastics wherever you can to support the shift to a more sustainable future.
John, are you okay? Oh my lord.
PSA, use reusable diapers.